sure some people will join, but I'd love just to hear how your holidays were so far. I'm still eating stuffing. The day after Thanksgiving, I made a whole nother round of it because I wanted to send my sister, brother-in-law, and two nephews home, and they forgot their leftovers. So, which is fine. Now I have a bunch more to eat, but we had 11 people, first time in this house that we now own, and that was a really cool experience. So, and there was a lot of like tension, and it was able to dissipate for the holiday, and I was really thankful for that. So how about
Awesome.
you?
It went well for us. My daughter actually cooked Thanksgiving dinner for us, so we went to her home. So it was awesome because it was us and the kids and her in-laws. So it was really great. It was a good time.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenda.
I was supposed to go to the United Kingdom to spend time with my daughter because she was studying abroad.
Right.
And she called me the Sunday before the Tuesday and said, I've got COVID.
Oh, no.
I had to cancel my UK trip. I would still be there right now. But she ended up, she's fine. She lost her taste and smell. And then basically she was in captivity over Thanksgiving and her 22nd birthday in a room by herself, quarantined. So my mom heart hurt for that,
Yeah.
But she and her friend there ended up getting it too. So she was able to at least hang out with somebody once they both had it. And I sent her a big care package via Amazon UK and sent her like a birthday cake and just stuff to do. And she made the best of it. And she's out today. She's out.
Good.
So we had a different Thanksgiving. It's the first time I didn't have kids on actual Thanksgiving Day or with family. My mom had other family come in because we'd hurried up and did our Thanksgiving beforehand. And so Rod and I like sat on the couch, watched movies, drank coffee, and didn't get out of our PJs. And it was outstanding.
That sounds really, really fun. Glad to hear your daughter's recovered too. We might make a UK trip. We're still considering it and stuff and talk. My wife's an epidemiologist, so she knows this stuff.
Yeah.
But she's talking to one of her colleagues just to help us think through, the safest way of making that possible to visit some of her family back there. So
yeah, she said they're starting to do a mask mandate again over there.
So welcome some new folks, Mindy, Kim, and Mitch. Good to see you. Mitch, thanks for the voicemail. I was on a 4-mile run trying to be like you at the time. So that's why I didn't respond. We're in the new watch too. And
all right.
We're just
Congrats.
talking. Yeah, thank you. We're talking just how the holidays went. We would love to hear from Larry and all the new folks.
Oh, I'd say they went pretty well. It's funny. Family can, I think, be dysfunctional by its very nature. And I was all prepared for one thing to happen, as we've seen historically some issues with, we'll say, a couple of family members, and it was all good. It was actually, we left and, people left our house, and my wife and I looked at each other. We're like, hey, that actually, was it not that bad? Or it was good. And it was good. And it was fun. And, it was great to see, my 3 kids and their grandparents outside of my father, who's been gone a few years. But yeah, it was fun. And the next day went over to my cousin's house, and they traditionally have a get together. It's kind of fun. So Thanksgiving Day, we all run a turkey classic together. So it was good. And now, like, tonight is night 2 of Hanukkah. It's funny. I have teenagers, and you would think like they've never celebrated this holiday before. They want something new every night. I'm like, guys, you're 14 and 16. Enough. You'll get your bigger gifts. They're coming. It's like everything in time.
Thank you, Larry. That's awesome. Appreciate that story.
I can echo that, Larry, for sure, about family and this. It was really nice this year. My parents live out on property kind of south of where I live, and most of our family we'll travel some from out of state, and it could be as big as 30 or 40 people gathering. Of course, that hasn't happened recently, and it was much smaller. We actually did it this year. The last year we certainly didn't. Maybe it's been 2 years, and it was nice. It was really nice. It was a good time to reconnect with family and be together. But the highlight, I think, for me was kicking off the holiday week. My wife and I escaped up to Portland, Oregon for 3 days, and my parents took the kids, and we had a little date trip. That was fantastic. That felt more like a vacation than all the rest of it. So
Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah, we had the same thing. We had the first gathering, and gosh, I guess we skipped 2 years just like you. And then, so there's just a dozen of us, a couple sister-in-laws, my mom, my mother-in-law, the girls, my daughters, and it was a blessing. It was absolutely perfect. There was nobody brought up politics. It was just enjoying each other. And man, there's a whole new appreciation for that at this point. So we're all healthy and just had a great holiday weekend.
Thanks, Kim. Welcome, Amy, too. I think Mindy's gonna share, but we were just talking about the holidays real quick.
Just quickly, my parents are they're in their 90s now, and I'm up in the Seattle area, but grew up in San Diego. They're still in San Diego, so I was blessed with 4 beautiful days in San Diego. And my 2 older kids and their kids live down in that area, so it was great to see everybody. But main thing for me at this point is my dad and mom are the same age. They're both 92, but I still get to jog 2.5 miles with my dad, who's 92. And I work real hard to see my mom so she'll remember who I am, so we're kind of in that funky stage in life. So it's, I agree with you. It's a real blessing to get to see them and my kids. So.
Thanks, Mindy. Glad you got to see him. Amy, you want to share anything?
Yeah, thank you. We had a nice holiday weekend. My husband actually works for DraftKings, which is a new career path for him. And it's all about sports betting. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but there's a lot of little perks. It's attached to a casino that's in our state. So we got to have a little casino time, and he's a big sports guy. So he got to watch all of his sports. And we got to have some good food and be with family. So it was fun.
Wonderful.
Amy, my son would be jealous. So he's 14, and so it's totally illegal. I'm just putting it out there. I know we're recording this, but he said, "Dad, let's get a DraftKings account together," and we did this past weekend. And now he knows flash drafts. He knows how to do all of it. And I think I could have an addict on my hands, but nonetheless, I thank your husband.
Yeah, it was interesting when I went to college. Yeah, I had a roommate and whatever. I mean, we all had roommates and that kind of thing, but I didn't realize he was actually like this bookie taking sports bets and odds and this kind of stuff on the side and doing all right for himself. I found that out years later, which is just kind of hilarious thinking about it, because he was like a really like clean cut, type of kid, and the family and all that kind of stuff. You never would have expected it. So very interesting, very interesting. All right. Well, thank you for catching us up on holiday stuff. And Maria Irene, great to see you too after some choir practice. And I passed on the Shauna message you sent Miriam as well, which was really kind. I haven't found out what it says yet, but I did pass it on. So, and I think that's all relevant too, because we were talking authenticity in terms of like what we were reading for this time. So part of the reading was on being values driven, which was great. I hope you think. And the other part what is it? I have to go back and look at my own book. The other part was, oh, that was the finishing it. Okay, cool. So I love the quote by Viktor Frankl that he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. I don't know if you've heard that quote before or not. And Viktor Frankl wrote probably my favorite book of all time, Man's Search for Meaning. And it was his experience surviving the Nazi, death camps during the Holocaust and World War II. And it's just an incredible account, his story, and how he navigated it. And so that's why I share that. If you have that why that's big enough, you can get through anyhow. And that's a piece of being authentic. So I'd love to hear for you, maybe your why has changed over the years and evolved in terms of like why you serve in education. Mine has certainly changed. It used to be very focused on serving students specifically that were under-resourced, and I just knew I'd be an awesome teacher. Like I was very confident in that. And my mom, she tells a story where I was like, Mom, I'm not ever going to teach back where we grew up in Palatine. It's a very affluent, well-off suburb of Chicago. And she always found that puzzling because she's like, didn't we give you a good life here? Like, why wouldn't you want to come back and this kind of thing? And I just said, I know I'm going to be a great teacher. And so I'm going to go where potentially kids might need me more. And that's just the decision I made. Last thing I'll say in terms of my why for education, now it's about you all, right? So it's just about connecting, growing, and mentoring every leader in education that wants to level up. And that's how I hope I show up, for you all. So how has what's your why these days? And if it's changed, how has it changed? I love one thing I will say real quick. I know Maria Irene, it looked like you were about to say something, but now that we have Mindy and Maria battling with guitars and musical instruments in the background, I love it. I love it so much.
I wish I could say I was musically inclined, but I'm not. So this is my friend's house. So
No worries. Own it anyways. We're glad to see you, Maria.
Danny, I can go first if you want. So I don't know that my why has really changed through my career. I started as a teaching assistant and moved my way all the way up to director of education. So I do believe that my philosophy still stayed the same. I always went into education as being part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I use that term because it's kind of how I approached students. And I continued that. It seemed like that philosophy kind of worked with no matter who I was dealing with. And I still believe that. I think that you have to choose to be focused on solutions, because if you just focus on problems, that's all you ever see. And it really worked for me. And I know, Danny, I talked to you about my book that I'm working on. And I have just found that no matter where I go, that philosophy seems to work. I approach it that way. So I'm a service leader. I feel like that I have always been that, no matter where I am. So I think my why has always been that, just being part of a solution.
The solution piece is so key, right? It's so easy to identify the problems, but not everybody identifies the solution. So thank you for that, Brenda.
Annie, I think my path, which you know pretty well, similar to teachers who move into administration to kind of widen the impact. I'm not an administrator and kind of chose a different path, but same why. I've always, since I started teaching, I came out of the nonprofit space, everybody, before I went into the classroom. So worked with at-risk middle school and high school age youth for a number of years, and then decided to step into the classroom. And it's always been about what's going to help these students be successful, like that opportunity to succeed, and have developed a program in my classroom that's now kind of widened in scope as well. But it's echoing that same sentiment that Brenda just shared. Like the why is really the same, but the privilege of having kind of casting a wider net and trying to keep that, but keep the authenticity there, not just to say, hey, we're working with all of these schools, but to say, is it still having that same meaningful impact on students that it did in my classroom. So.
My wife for being a teacher is to make students profit from all that they are learning, and make them improve and prepare them for the work, for life, prepare them for life after school. So I always try to do that. And also one of the things I wanted to do, but I couldn't, was to motivate my colleagues to use some different approaches to education, because they were some of them were not using the most the best approaches. So they were using methods that were not, I think some of the students and some of my colleagues used those methods, and I saw that the students were not responding. So I also tried that, but the most important is to prepare students for life and prepare them to not to give up, when there is some difficulty, some problem. So I try to make them see that all of them are worth going on, and all of them, if they try hard, they will get to their goals.
Thank you, Maria.
Are we sharing our why as to why we went into education?
Yeah, and if it's changed over the years.
I think for me, I think I went in initially really going into education because of the stories that my parents told me about their experiences in education, and other family members who weren't allowed to speak Spanish in the classroom because they'd get punished, and growing up with that experience. And then my dad, who was had special education needs, but was a genius in math and just struggling with the reading piece, and not getting the support he needed. And then my mom also having struggles in education, and then she dropped out when she was 16. But one of the things that I think really stood out for me, especially for my mom, is that her when she dropped out, it was because she got pregnant with me, and she tried 3 times throughout her life to get her GED. And my parents never said, hey, Maria, education is really important. You need, get your education, go to school, do what you need to do. They never said that to me. They never talked to me about going to college, but watching my mom get her GED was better than them telling me what I needed to do, because she put into action what I needed to know and understand. And I think she kind of left that legacy with me, where when she turned 46 and finally completed her GED. Didn't stop, she kept going until she finally did it. And I was really proud of her. But I think for me, that spoke volumes as to the importance of education and what I wanted to be able to convey and communicate to the students that I serve, and being able to go in and represent those students, especially those students who seem to be kind of lost. And, one of the things I feel very passionate about is sort of serving as a compass to some of our kids who don't know what direction they want to be able to go into. And they just need somebody to kind of guide them into the direction that they might want to go. And I feel like that's my mission. That's why I go into the classroom. That's why I'm supporting teachers, is to help my colleagues to remember we're there to serve as a compass. I'm in high school, so a lot of times we get kids who, when they're getting ready to make that transition, they don't know what they want to do. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of help them figure out what direction they want to be able to go, and kind of serve as that compass to our kids.
I love the image of a compass. That's really powerful. I always thought about opening doors and creating access, and opportunities for students. I'm really resonating with that.
Yeah, I think the compass piece was the one thing that I did add in the last maybe 4 years to what it is that I feel very committed to doing when working with students.
Great. Anybody else want to share? And we can open it up for some other questions. There goes the organized binder pen. If you heard that, Mitch, it fell off the desk there. In terms of values and authenticity, was there anything that really resonated with you reading through the end of chapter 3 there?
Chapter 2.
I do have one question, but I see people flipping through their books, so I want to create time if there's something you want to ask. Maria Irene, I'm curious too. Did the book ever make it to Portugal? The one I sent you?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I got the book. I told you. I
forgot then. Okay, great.
It's here.
Okay,
It's
good,
here,
good,
right?
good.
And,
Okay.
and I wrote you an email telling you that and thanking you for
Okay.
for
I have
getting it.
I have a very terrible memory, so.
Oh, I have been reading it. It's very interesting, and I think I regret not having seen it before I retired, because some of the things that are here I think could be applied to the classes in my school. So, but okay, better late than never.
Better late than never. And it's packaged for
Yeah.
school leaders because that's who I like to serve. But honestly, it just works, period. For parents, it works for teachers, it works for anybody. So
I couldn't stop reading it. So I read it till the end because it was so interesting.
oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
I really did.
Thank you. Thank you.
So something that resonated with me, because it's been a struggle, on page 96, you talk about the secret of top performers and that they know not everything has to be A level. So as I stepped into my first principalship this fall, the whole goal, just like when you go into the classroom, is I want to be the best teacher these people have ever had, right? I want to be the best leader for my staff and for my kids in my building. And everything in my mind had to be A level. And then I was dropping everything at home with my girls, with my husband, with my health, my own personal health. And we kind of hit not rock bottom. That could have gotten a lot worse than it was, but just to the point that it was stretched so thin, I had to step back for a second. And that really resonated with me as I was, catching up on reading last week and taking this beautiful break and having time with my family and getting my priorities and my head back on straight. I don't have to do it all at the A level. And it's still a learning process to figure out what is important enough to put that time into and invest it and make sure it's quality and what is good enough being done, and check it off the list and move forward. But that hit home for me in a big way.
Good. I'm glad it did. It's a tough one to learn, but it's really funny. You have those school improvement plans are, I think, a perfect example, and it could be just my lived experience, but I've yet to meet a school who completed a, school improvement plan or whatever. And it's really the guiding rock and guiding force in the building. Most of the time, again, it's my experience, but it's completed. And when there were papers, they were filed away and never seen again. And now digitally, you just hit send and you never hear from anybody that's, accountability wise, like if it's good or bad. So the last one I ever did, I did a very poor job on purpose, doing as little as I could because I just wanted to see if I would get yelled at, honestly, and nothing ever happened. And I'm like, saved myself a ton of time. See a lot of smiles and heads nodding.
That makes me sad, Danny.
Yeah.
Kim, I love that you said that because I think that I see lots of principals doing that and they're just running around trying to do everything just perfectly. I'm meeting with 4 principals right now and I feel like that they're just going to just burn out. I mean, they're on the fast track to burn out. So I so appreciate you noticing that because I noticed that too, but I did want somebody else to say that because I can see them just burning out. I mean, they're struggling with that. I can see them just running around trying to get everything done. So I'm so thankful that you have figured that out and you read that in Danny's book because you don't have to be perfect at everything.
Yeah. I think that's why that piece around psychological safety is so important, and having a mentor guide you through, what am I supposed to be doing? How do I respond to these things that I've never done before? And if you don't have that in place, I think it makes it really difficult to be effective and to know what makes sense. So you're not feeling like you have to do everything at this level and that you can at least submit something to show that you're working on it and making progress. I think for me, I was on a burnout on the path to burning out because there were people who didn't want me in the space. My admin team, I didn't work well with them. They didn't want me there. It was the teachers who picked me. And so I was determined to say, I'm gonna bring my A game all the time because I didn't want anybody to find fault in anything that I did. And so I began operating at that high level all the time. And I got to a point where I think there were moments I just couldn't process even certain very simple things because I was always in fear of failing. And that didn't create psychological safety for me. What it did was cause me to operate under very high level of stress. And therefore I ended up struggling and making mistakes on a regular basis, actually.
That's the irony of it all when you're trying to, just try to be perfect or whatever. You can't keep it up and ultimately your performance degrades across multiple domains, right? So thanks for sharing that, Maria.
Danny, not to get too specific, but you bring up a great point about school improvement plans. So I'm in my 4th year as principal. 5 years before that, I was assistant. So I'm on maybe my 4th school improvement plan. And this is actually the first time that we've paused at the beginning of the year and said, let's look at this thing. Like, there's a reason we did this. Yes, there's the compliance piece, but there is this, there is this thing, there is this document that's supposed to really be your vision, your mission, and everything else. And I actually feel like, holy smokes, we're actually doing something related to that work. The work that we're doing now aligns with the plan, and we're intentionally aligning it with the plan. So that's exciting. But, Marie, you bring up a good point. It's like I always tell staff, even the teachers, I'm like, guys, look, we're all spinning plates, and it's okay. Like, one can drop, and guess what? Tomorrow's going to come. The next 5 minutes are going to come. Now, it sounds really good when I say it now. I don't always practice it. You can ask my wife in the next room. I'm sure she'd be like, you think you're lying to that book club right now. But I mean, seriously, I think it's like giving yourself that permission to say, you know what? It's okay. So it wasn't an A day. It wasn't a great day, or this didn't work out. Like, life will go on. So I think it's realizing that that's so key.
And realizing and having somebody who's at your level, your supervisor or anybody, also tell you it is okay, because we were performing for a reason, and we need to be able to hear it from somebody who's mentoring it or working alongside us as our colleague.
Yes, I'm gonna go with what you said, Marie, about the compass, because I was a school improvement writer. The state actually used mine as a model. So that's why I said I was sad about Danny's school improvement plan, because that should be your compass. Larry, you're right. That should be driving everything that you're doing. And it should always come back to that. And so one of the things that we talk about is the core values and beliefs that you have. So, I'm working with some individuals that there's a mission statement that is for the school. And it's one of those canned mission statements that they don't believe in. And so it's really hard for them to kind of go with the staff and, put this mission statement out there when they don't really believe in it. So we're kind of like at a, what do we do with this? And I just joined with coaching them, just like, this is my second week with them. So we should have really started a long time ago. But, what if you don't believe in your mission statement? What do you do?
Yeah. And I think since again, the idea of chapter 3 is authenticity, it's like, are the documents meaningful? Are the mission statements meaningful or not? Are they guiding the work? So I'm not arguing that school improvement plans should be thrown out, but if you know the context of your school and district, and if it's not used, or the beef that I had with them, and I think education really sucks at this. So I am going to be very strong opinioned in this. Education is terrible at being very focused and being awesome at a small amount of things, and not trying to be everything to everyone in the community, all kids, all that stuff, honestly. And I'm working with a business coach who I really enjoy working with. And I have some goals around serving more school leaders and growing the business side of things that I do. And it's funny because obviously he's not going to fly here and stop me. But the message over and over is just like, do the mastermind and do the principal success path. That's it. Nothing new. And I think in schools, we're always adding the new, or to Larry's point, finally bringing back what you've worked on and not redoing the whole process. Like, it's there. Let's use it as the compass, like Maria said. So that's one connection. The other one, Mitch and I just finished a book by Ryan Holiday called Courage is Calling. And towards the end of the book, Ryan Holiday talked about this Japanese pottery that I hadn't heard about before, hadn't heard about in a long time. And he reminded me, I can't pronounce it. It might be kintsugi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but essentially pottery that breaks, right? And I could think of, I had this, right? I had like the coffee cup that I got in undergrad as in college, right? And I remember when my partner dropped it in like 2012, 14, over a decade since I had been a freshman in college. And usually I don't get upset about losing things. I was actually quite upset that I lost that coffee mug because I knew it couldn't be replaced. I wish I would have known this art. But to Larry's thing with the plates, and you're going to drop some plates, the Japanese would glue back the pottery and use this beautiful gold substance to join it. And then the pottery looked even better, was the way they reframed it than the original, right? And like, what a wonderful thing to also communicate to staff is like, okay, hey, we dropped some plates. Now, how can we put it back together so it's even better than the original version without any flaws? So yeah, check out that article, or after the mastermind book, Pick Up Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday, and you can read the story there. That's what it looks like.
I just want to jump in and give kudos to you all, school leaders who are even thinking about it. I think of it as like sustainability. And I remember when I first started teaching, I met this very veteran teacher. Everyone loved her. She was like a force on campus. And she told me, she came to me and was like, I'm going to mentor you and kind of explain how this goes. And the kind of key to her message to me was, and she said this, like, during the school, she could, and I'm only saying this because I didn't have kids. I was newly married. I could stay at school till whatever, figuring out, myself from a hole in the ground kind of thing. Like, what am I going to do tomorrow? And that was me. And she was always there till like 9 o'clock at night. And so we started this relationship and conversation. And she was like, yeah, my model is during the school year is my work time. And then in summer is my family time. And I remember being like, wait, you have kids? And like, a whole thing, what? Like, that's the most messed up thing. That's actually why I left the nonprofit world, because there was no bound. It was just like, try being an ED of a nonprofit. There's no boundaries. It's all you, which is probably similar to being a school leader or a district leader. So to even be thinking about that sustainability, like, how do I do this well? And I coach new teachers all the time saying, hey, be good, be really good, but don't try to be great. Because first of all, who knows what that even means? What it tends to mean is very little to students and student outcome, and your whole life is going to become completely out of balance because you're just going to go for something that's not realistic. But I say all that to say, you're spinning all these plates as the school or district leader, and then something happens where you can't even, and I was on a call before this with a school that's using Organized Binder, which is my program, and a student died this weekend, and very tragically. And I just think of like, okay, you have all these plates spinning, and then something like that, or maybe not that severe happens. There's, Larry, to your point, like, just plates are going to fall, and they should fall, right? And I think it takes a leader who's willing to just be like, let them fall, right? This particular district is trying to say things like, well, we gave counselors for one day. And the school's like, it's just one of those things. But all of that's not the point. But I know, like, that principal's still spinning whatever, all the plates. So to have a more human and sustainable practice, because this is all over the country. Like, people are just like, it's not a doable job. And I'm like, does it have to be that way? Can you reimagine it, which is what I'm hearing, which is more human. So just wanted to say kudos. Long-winded way of saying kudos.
They need to hear it. That's good, Mitch. Kudos all around. Another question I have has to do with edges, and then I'll see if anybody else has more questions. But in the book, I talk about choosing different edges. This was an idea Seth Godin taught me. I remember the examples: free versus expensive, weekly versus monthly, face-to-face versus digitally, that kind of thing. Organized binder, that is old school, don't reinvent the wheel, an actual physical product that you get in your hand. And like, Mitch, this is not your invitation to talk about why you're not doing digital, okay? Because this is he'll go on forever. But it's a physical product that's an edge. That's my point. for me in the mastermind, one edge that I love is that we read 0 books in education, right? So with the exception of this one. But I love to learn from other industries, not that they're better at all. But my assertion is you are already reading all the stuff in education. So why don't I introduce new things, right? And we figure out what's the bridge between that industry and education. So with that said, in the places where you lead, whether that's a classroom or a school, whatever, what are some edges you'd like to establish if you haven't thought about that before? Or if you have, what are those edges? And just for reference, that was on page 122, in case you wanted to see. You know, it's fun reading like a line that you actually like that you wrote. So I put, there are no wrong edges. They are merely a signal of what you've built for who you serve.
I think one, I can connect to this quite well because I'm working on my dissertation right now. And it's when I defended and my proposal and successfully passed. But one of the things that I was really passionate about in writing it came from the idea, we all know how Chick-fil-A is very welcoming when you come to their business and you feel important and special. And that's kind of where my dissertation started. Like, how can we create educational environments where families and students always feel welcomed and supported? And so I focused on classified staff in terms of whether or not they're engaging in culturally responsive practices with our students of color. And one of the things I have observed over the years is that they could either be welcoming or they could be gatekeepers to the environment. And so that would be that edge that you're talking about, you know, welcoming or being the gatekeeper. And I've seen both in educational environments where somebody could come in to ask for a transcript because they're going to another school, and for whatever reason, the secretary or registrar refuses to give that transcript to the family, frustrating them, and they don't understand why. They don't get the reason behind it, and it's not explained to them. You know, other situations where that has happened, and I think what I know to also be true is that a lot of times our classified staff tend to be of color as well. And so they tend to operate as insiders from the communities of color that schools are serving. And so they could go either way as well. And I think that's an important aspect to be aware of. And especially if we're trying to create environments in our school that are welcoming and that every family member feels important when they come into our building. You know, who's the first person that they're going to meet or be greeted by when they come into the building, and is that experience a positive one for our families and students? And so I think for me that's an important thing, because I've been in buildings where that hasn't been the case. And so I think when I think about edges, that's one edge that I definitely can connect and know that is some work that I'm trying to develop myself by engaging in some research to support that concept or that idea.
Ah. Oh.
Alba has joined us.
Alba.
Any other edges you think for your classroom or your school?
I think I always go back to, for my edge is kind of the ongoing theme is visibility. Meaning I never want somebody to be in a school or, even my new business is that invisibility and that feeling of isolation. I think that's we were talking earlier about my why, how my why has changed in the different people that I serve. But my why has always been based on my experience in fifth grade with being bullied, and the only person that really saw that was my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. McCone, and the janitor who ate lunch with me each day. And I always think about whenever I'm serving in any capacity, where are the invisible ones? Where are the kids that even, and not even just the ones that are maybe misfits or don't quite fit in, but even the ones that were kind of like me in the sense that I looked a certain way and everybody thought I had this certain life, yet I didn't. And so how important it is to be able to get into the backgrounds and into the baggage and to all the things that we bring, whether it's your students or your staff or the people you serve. How do you connect with them in a way that helps you find empathy and an ability to not make them feel alone? So I'm just very geared to, I don't want anybody to feel alone, that they have people in their corner and on their side, and I see you and I value you, and I want you to feel like you're a part of whatever it is, this school, this district, this world. Has always driven me. And I think that's the edge that I bring.
That's needed. So thank you, Kristen, for doing that.
It makes me think so much of I'm trying to find the page where you talk about the frames and how you have to change your frame. You assume what happened, I saw this happen, and so this must be this story, and it isn't necessarily the reality of it. And just how much value there is in changing your frame to, let's just assume it was not on purpose or intentional, or making sure they're seen and feeling like they have someone on their side. I love that.
Any
It's
other last?
interesting.
Go ahead, Mindy. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to add, just listening, the themes are kind of surround the beauty of relationships and building relationships. And you all are speaking so highly of that, which is wonderful and encouraging, of course. And yet, I think underneath that, you all know that the relationships that you're building and working on create an inner core, compass core, that provide avenue for a passion for curiosity and learning. So the learning comes from the relationship building and the value in that. So it's just really wonderful to hear you guys talk about that.
Thank you, Mindy. Yeah, all I was going to add was just any other last thoughts on authenticity or questions you want to bring up before we close out.
I really enjoyed the, and I know it's taking us back a few steps, but because we talked about it the last session, which just when you talked about psychological safety, sort of giving us some, activities that you could try like tomorrow when it comes to building psychological safety, either in your team, in your classroom, with your assistant, with your community. It was great stuff. And I meant to put something into play today and I didn't, but it's going to happen. So maybe next time I'll be able to report it back. But it was just, to me, it was really, really helpful to read sort of something tangible that I could hang on to, not just, a theory. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so Larry's talking about there's a table in page 78, 79, and then the subsequent pages are a brief description of those activities. It's not everything that you could do to build psychological safety, but a few things that I've experimented with that are interesting. And then it aligned with some of the work that Amy Edmondson did in terms of the beliefs, behaviors, and constructs, in her view, in her research, that help create psychological safety. So I'm really curious, Larry, what did you want to try? And I know life got in the way, but you're going to do it, it sounds like, pretty soon.
Well, so I liked, and we did it in this group, but I loved the idea of drawing somebody, that self-portrait idea. I just thought it would be good to do when my coach's admin team, and we just didn't do it. People wound up being a little bit late to a meeting, and it was like, all right, let's get right down to business. But it's something that I think we need to start, and perhaps even sprinkling this in, maybe not every time we meet, but every other time. Let's try X, and sort of push people's boundaries a little bit and make them, if they're comfortable enough, perhaps make them a bit more vulnerable than they otherwise might be, so we can work on some problems together. But I love the self-portrait one. I think it's not the self-portrait one, the drawing. Yeah.
So ironically, that's what I drew of Kendra, right? That's Kendra Chapman, who stopped by. It doesn't look like her at all. But the irony is that Larry's bringing it up, and Kendra sent me her picture of me today, because she said, I'm sorry I can't make it tonight, but she wanted to share the picture. So anyways, that is a good one. It brings laughs. We're all reliving that right now. The one thing I'll push you though on, Larry, and everybody, like, hey, listen, thing is this type of stuff is the quickest to get pushed to the side, because important things need to be covered, right? But these type of activities, it's like 5 minutes or less, right? If 5 minutes, but the return on investment and the goodwill and culture that you build and that small deposit is absolutely worth it. And so I would just challenge everyone to continue to do a little bit of that each time.
Larry, I wove that into my PD the Wednesday after we did it on Monday. And I let it stretch, because they were just, the laughter and the joy in that room for those 5 or 10 minutes. All the kudos goes to Danny, because it wasn't me. I enjoyed it so much myself. They had the best time. They wanted to post the pictures for the kids to see if they could identify which teacher is in the picture. But I
love it. You know what? I have PG. I'm going to see if I can convince my team to allow me, just indulge me 5 minutes. We have PG coming up on Thursday. Maybe I love it. I love it. It would just be a good way to start. Yeah.
It took no time to set up. I set my timer for 90. If you had to cut it back to 60 seconds, they had the best time. It was good.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Kim, and the students had to try to guess like which teachers the pictures were. Did I catch that, or am I making?
Jokingly said we should post them for the kids to do. The staff was not prepared to do that.
Oh, you absolutely should. Yeah. That's really wonderful. Well, I think maybe in closing then, since we got about 5 minutes, I would just love to hear from everybody, number one insight from tonight. And before we go there, while you're thinking, next week is December 6th, if you could believe that. We're already into December. And we'll be reading chapter 4, which is on belonging. So not the whole chapter, just pages 130 through 169 is what we plan to cover. What was your number one insight tonight?
We chatting this or saying it, Danny?
Yeah, we have time to say it, I think.
I already said it, but it's always refreshing as a teacher to be in a group of school leaders and district leaders like you all to think this way. So it's just like, okay, there's hope.
For me, I also teach yoga, and the when you talked about the item when it gets cracked and then you fill it with gold to put it back together to make something beautiful. In yoga, we also talk about when we're cracked from a situation, it allows the light to shine brighter. So I always like try to think about when I dull my students' light or when I give them the opportunity to really shine bright. Like I try to think about it that way.
Thank you.
I think the thing that I'm taking back to focus on when I get, some like this hour to just think and to be intentional with my time and plan and get right. I've got to think about the edges. My mind's pulling back to the edges. I love it. And it's good thinking. I need to think about that a little bit more.
Sometimes you feel maybe a little scary, but the wonderful thing about it is like, I don't know, I talk a lot and use the metaphor of the magnet, right? It attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. And I think the reason it feels scary is it's getting back to the tension of trying to be everything to everyone instead of saying, nope, this is what we're all about here. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to take the quote that you like, Danny, because I like it too. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. I don't know if Danny, we're from the same kind of the state. I don't know if you ever had a chance to go over to Terre Haute, Indiana to see the Candles Museum. Did you ever get a chance to do that? So Eva Kor, she was actually the museum. So she was a Holocaust survivor. She was one of the twins. She passed away just a couple of years ago, but she was amazing. And I took, when I taught, I took my kids there all the time. And she probably taught me the most about leadership and forgiveness. And one of the things that she taught me was about character education. I was doing so much with character education. And I asked her to come to speak to the kids about tolerance. And she said, no, she wouldn't come and do that. She didn't believe in tolerance. I'm like, what? She goes, no, you tolerate a mosquito buzzing in your ear. You do not tolerate human beings. You respect them. So this reminds me of Eva a little bit too. So we have to look at our core values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brenda. Cool. I know a lot of people put insights in the chat as well, so I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. But I really love being able to discuss this work with some really cool people. So thank you for making this a really fun experience for all of us, I think. And see you next week where we're reading a bit, of chapter 4. All right. Have a great night. Go make a ruckus.